It happened in a limestone karst sinkhole in the south of the Krasnoyarsk Territory, where a small group of visiting specialists from a regional university was conducting routine archaeological surveys. Nothing unusual: layers of clay, fragments of ancient animals, traces of late Neolithic campsites. However, one day, a young staff member's shovel hit an object that shouldn't have been there. From under the ground, a section of bone nearly the length of a human arm appeared. At first, they thought it was the remains of an ancient rhinoceros or a large ungulate, but as the excavation deepened, it became increasingly obvious that the find had nothing to do with the animal world. Gradually, a human skeleton began to reveal itself to the researchers, but an absolutely unusual one. The height of the creature, judging by the proportions, exceeded 3.5 meters. The jaw looked excessively heavy, the joints thickened, and the structure of the bone tissue was significantly denser than that of a modern human. When the skull was extracted, a heavy silence hung over the camp. The eye sockets turned out to be disproportionately wide, the forehead sloped sharply back, and the teeth were large and almost untouched by time. The head of the expedition, archaeology professor Alexei Diomin, at first did not believe his eyes. In decades of work, he had not encountered anything like it. It was decided not to disclose information until the laboratory studies were completed. The bones were carefully packed and sent to the Yekaterinburg Center for Paleoanthropology. In the evening, sitting by the fire, one of the graduate students remarked with a smirk, "What if these are the same giants spoken of in local legends?" Everyone laughed, but Diomin remained serious. He understood too well that legends rarely arise without a reason. A few days later, the first results of the radiocarbon analysis arrived. The age of the bones turned out to be significantly greater than expected, about 13,000 years. This placed the find at the end of the last ice age. However, according to all modern science, humans of such dimensions did not exist back then. When the information reached the capital structures, representatives from Moscow arrived at the camp. They demanded an immediate cessation of work and that all materials be handed over to state control. The wording was vague. The object was of special significance and required a special storage regime. Diomin's team felt that something more was hidden behind this. The bones were taken away under guard. The professor himself was allowed to be present during further research, but only on the condition of strict confidentiality. In the laboratory, when specialists began to extract DNA from the femur, they expected to see standard markers of an ancient human, Homo sapiens, or, at the very least, a Neanderthal. However, the results proved impossible. The genetic structure did not match any known human species. Moreover, certain sections of DNA had no analogs in any database. They belonged to something unknown. That evening, Diomin stood at the laboratory window for a long time, looking at the night city, realizing that he had encountered not just a rare find, but perhaps a lost branch of humanity. But the strangest part began later. On the second day, the research had to be stopped. The samples began to disintegrate right during the analysis, as if the matter itself resisted interference. Anxious talk spread through the laboratory. Someone claimed to have seen moisture droplets appearing on the surface of the bone despite the dry air in the room. After that, the laboratory was closed and all employees were obliged to sign non-disclosure agreements. Diomin tried to gain repeated access but was refused. That same evening, a junior technician named Kirill approached him. He looked frightened and spoke almost in a whisper, claiming that the test results had been substituted. Kirill insisted that the original DNA data matched neither Neanderthals nor animal forms. They were frighteningly close to modern humans, but with key differences that shouldn't exist. Diomin was skeptical, but Kirill showed him a printout of the primary tests. In the lines where standard human markers should have been, there were strange sequences resembling elements of viral code. The next morning, the printout disappeared, and Kirill himself did not show up for work. It was reported that he had left urgently, but it was impossible to contact him. Diomin realized that what was happening had long since gone beyond science. A week later, he received an official notification. The project was closed, all materials classified. However, inside the envelope lay another sheet without a signature. It said, "Look further south, near the passes," and a postscript. "This is not an isolated case." Diomen gathered a small group of 3 trusted students and, under the guise of geological practice, went to a remote area on the border of Tuva. In an abandoned quarry cut by cracks, they began excavations. Already on the second day, under stone slabs, they found the remains of a second skeleton, partially charred, as if it had died in a massive fire. The dimensions were again striking. The height of the creature, according to the surviving fragments, exceeded 4 meters. Around were traces of ash, primitive tools, and charred handprints, human in shape but several times larger than normal. Diomen examined the find in silence, feeling a strange combination of awe and mounting horror. He understood that this was not a coincidence, but a lost chapter of history. In the evening, as the sun disappeared behind the cliffs, one of the students noticed that the soil at the edge of the excavation was vibrating slightly. At first, they thought it was wind or distant machinery. At night, Diomen woke up from a dull thud underground. Then the sound repeated, as if someone were slowly and rhythmically hitting the stone from the inside. He went out of the tent and saw the lantern near the excavation go out on its own. No one slept until morning. At dawn, it became clear that the top layer of soil over the skeleton had risen, as if something from below were trying to get out. At that moment, Diomen felt truly afraid for the first time. He decided to wrap up the work immediately, but he didn't make it. By noon, the military arrived. People in uniforms without insignia ordered the excavations to stop and seize the equipment. One of them approached the professor and said coldly, "You have come too close to what should remain underground." At that moment, Diomen noticed a small, whitish fragment sticking out of the mound near the box of bones. He quickly hid it in his pocket, not realizing that this very piece would change his life. Returning to Yekaterinburg, the professor felt empty. All the finds had vanished. The students had scattered. One of them even dropped out of university, but in his jacket pocket remained that very fragment. Under a microscope, it became clear that it was not a mineral, but a piece of bone. The surface had a strange crystalline structure, shimmering in low light as if the light were coming from within. Using old equipment, Diomen conducted a spectral analysis. The result was inexplicable. The composition contained a compound resembling silicon, but with an organization characteristic of living tissues. This meant that the organism possessed properties unknown to modern science. At night, Diomen received a call from an unknown person. The voice was calm and confident. He knew everything, even about the hidden sample. He said, "You found not what you were looking for. They have not disappeared. They went down." The connection was cut. A few days later, the professor sent the fragment to a colleague in Kazan, anthropologist Elena Vlasova. She conducted an independent analysis and called back in a state of panic. The bone was biological. Its age was about 30,000 years, and the DNA matched modern human DNA by 99%. Only the gene responsible for growth and bone density differed. She said, "If this is true, then we are not the only ones." The next day, Vlasova disappeared. All her materials were destroyed. Later, an elderly geologist told Diomen that back in the Soviet years, similar remains had been found in these places, and a hall with dozens of giant skeletons was discovered underground, which was then filled with concrete. Everything fit into a single picture. These creatures lived alongside humans and were either destroyed or hid. Late in the evening, Diomen returned home and found that his apartment had been broken into. On the table lay his bone fragment, on the surface of which a transparent drop of liquid had appeared. It moved slowly, leaving a faint glowing trail. That night, the bone began to emit a bluish glow, the electronics failed, and a pattern resembling a DNA structure appeared on the wall. Later, in an underground complex, Diomin saw capsules with the bodies of these creatures in a state of sleep. One of them was breathing. When everything collapsed, he realized that this was not the past. This was the present. Later, a recording was sent to him where some capsules turned out to be empty. The creatures were awakening. He passed the materials to a journalist abroad and disappeared. Later, an image of a bone with symbols similar to ancient signs was found in an archive repeating the same phrase. "We will return when we are no longer remembered." The story of Professor Diomin disappeared from official sources, but every time archaeologists hear strange sounds underground, they prefer to remain silent. Because sometimes the past is not what is gone, it is what waits. Dear viewers, what do you think of this story? Please tell us in the comments, and if you liked this video, then like and subscribe to our channel. Goodbye.